What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back to yet another episode of 5 Questions with Levi. Yes, this episode came out a little bit later than normal on a Tuesday. That's because, well, me and my slow brain completely forgot to do the episode earlier in the week, so a last-minute recording on a Tuesday, the same day as when this gets posted, as I just hit my table. Yeah, it should kind of go to show you how disheveled I am right now, but nonetheless, I am here to answer the questions that got asked on the last video last week, and don't forget to send me questions in the comment section below for next week's episode. But let's go ahead and get to the questions for this week, shall we? Daily988 asks, what got you into liking pro wrestling? For me, it was the Dr. Thugonomics Cena. Well, I got into wrestling because my two brothers, one of them who unfortunately passed away nearly 3 years ago. God, I can't believe it's been nearly 3 years since I lost my big brother, Rue. But our other brother, Jason, they were both huge wrestling fans as they grew up in the 80s. They watched everything. NWA, WCW, WWF. They watched everything together, and then eventually once I was conceived, and then around the time I turned 3 years old, going into 4 years old, the thing that got me into pro wrestling was WrestleMania 14, because we used to have that on VHS, now I got it on DVD, or I could watch it on the WWE Network, and it still remains to this day my favorite pay-per-view in the history of the business, because it's what got me into where I am today 20 years later as a fan. God, I feel so old. Ben Crouch asks, do you like Godsmack? Yes, I like Godsmack. Not so much their recent stuff from like the last almost 10 years. Like, I really liked their first album, their self-titled debut from '98. That had a lot of killer songs on there. Of course, they put out great songs in between '98 and 2006. You know, songs like I Stand Alone, Realign, Awake, Speak, Bleeding Me, Voodoo. There's been so many great songs by Godsmack. It's just, I haven't been listening to them much. I did listen to their 1000 Horsepower album from 4 years ago, and I thought it was really good, but from what I've heard with When Legends Rise, I've heard a lot of people not really liking it so much. Because, from what I've gathered, it's because they're trying to sound like Nickelback and be a radio-friendly rock band instead of their alternative metal sound that they were known for their whole career. So that's just the assumption I've gathered from a lot of people, but aside from that, I do like Godsmack, and their first album remains, in my opinion, one of the more underrated debut albums in the history of metal, because most people only talk about the hits off that album when there's so much more. Space Metal Ferrari 248 asks, best and worst black and death metal bands? Well, that's a very, very broad question. Well, for best black metal bands that I've heard, I would say Bathory, Mayhem, Dark Throne, Immortal, Emperor. If you want to count Dissection, which in my opinion I say they're more melodic death metal, but if you want to count Dissection, then go ahead. Yeah, there's quite a few black metal bands that I do enjoy. However, as far as my least favorite black metal band, it isn't so much because of his beliefs and the actions he did back in the day, but whenever I hear the music, aside from maybe a song or two, I just never got into them, and that's Burzum. And I just, other than just Varg being a moron, I just never really got into Burzum's music. To me, I just feel that there were many other better black metal bands out there in Norway than Burzum. Hell, Ulver I would prefer over Burzum, hands down. For death metal, on the other hand, best death metal bands, you know, Death is probably the #1. After all, they invented the style. You had Morbid Angel up until what the hell was that album called in 2011? Fuck, I can't remember. But Cannibal Corpse, Obituary, Carcass, Suffocation, Broken Hope. There's so many great death metal bands, or even melodic death metal like At the Gates, Insomnium, and so many others. As far as worst death metal band, insert any boring generic deathcore band or 6 Feet Under. That's basically all I've got on that one. BlazeLife334 asks, since you love Marvel so much, what do you think was the weakest film you've seen? Well, if you're talking Marvel in general in this generation, or MCU, if you were to tell me worst MCU film, I would still say Iron Man 3. But if you're talking Marvel in general, it would be a toss-up between the 2015 Fantastic Four reboot or the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. Those two are pretty bad movies. Pretty bad. Or hell, even the second Ghost Rider movie was not so good either. But if I had to choose one, I'd say the 2015 Fantastic Four reboot. Just forget about it. Billy Bishop asks, do you prefer the original version of A Tout Le Monde from Euthanasia or A Tout Le Monde Set Me Free with Christina Scabia from United Abominations by Megadeth? I mean, both versions are great in their own right. Like, I like the newer version with Christina because she's got a great voice. However, as far as atmosphere, the mood, and the speed and the tone, I would probably go with the Euthanasia version because it sounded so much more somber and so much more darker than the United Abominations version. As much as I do like that version, I prefer the original from Euthanasia so much more. And that does it for this episode of 5 Questions with Levi. Thank you all so much for sending in questions. Be sure to send questions in the comments section below for next week's episode. But until then, peace out, and I will see you soon. Billy Bishop asks, do you prefer the original version of A Tout Le Monde from Euthanasia or a Tout... Billy Bishop asks, do you prefer the original version of a... well, it should not be so hard. Billy Bishop asks, do you prefer the original version of A Tout Le Monde from Euthanasia or... I cannot talk. Yeah, this is going in the bloopers, by the way.